Readers care about the product and they want a good product. I don't think that they care that you've self-published it, so long as you've got a good product out there.
Yes.
You should be putting quality out there. And that means you should be setting high standards for yourself. I think self-publishing can be absolutely great. It should be great. There is negativity about some self-publishing, but that's only because that's only if people set low standards for themselves.
Tuning into Unfiltered Voices. I'm Kelly Nissen, and I'm all about shining a light on the self-publication industry because self-published is never second-rate. Rebecca Fung, welcome to Unfiltered Voices.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Kelly.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you on. Rebecca Fung is a children's book author from Sydney, Australia. She's published short stories, children's chapter books, and a middle grade novel, and has travelled both pathways, traditional and self-published. Rebecca's latest novel, published by her imprint Altitude Press, is Septopus, the story of Stanley, a seven-legged octopus. And just by way of disclaimer, I did a review of Septopus last year for Buzzwords, which is how I found out about Rebecca, and have been trying to get her to come onto the show for ages. So I'm so glad that you're here now, Rebecca. Now, when I asked you for a catchy phrase, which I ask everybody for, so the catchy phrase is something that sums you up as an author, you gave me, and I'm going to stuff this up, they're actually saying this, curious and curiouser. Oh, I said it right, yeah. And you said that the interesting facts that you find throughout the world inspire you, which is part of that curiosity. So what's the latest thing that you're curious about, and is it sparking a new project for you?
Yes. Well, as you will probably know, the Curious and Curiouser comes from Lewis Carroll, and I really, really value curiosity as a trait. I'm always interested in finding out new facts about the world. And one thing that I think has been very controversial lately is artificial intelligence. Now, this is something that's a big deal, especially for writers. And a lot of people, I think, understandably, have an aversion to it, and with in writing, because it's something where people will say, AI is stealing from us, AI might be taking over writing, taking over our jobs, but and I absolutely understand that there are the really negative aspects to it, but I am actually curious about what the world could be like with how technology and artificial intelligence could be changing the world. And I did write in my book a very special moon mission about a supercomputer. So the supercomputer takes the children into outer space and was powering a spaceship. And I thought to myself a bit about, what are these aspects of robots that can be somewhat clever and might take over some of the aspects of our lives. There are also many science fiction stories about this that we've seen, and one of the stories that I wrote, or I'm part of the way through, is a story about a girl who has a robotic dog.
Okay.
Now, one of the reasons I was interested in this is because most of us think about dogs. Many people love dogs, but most of us think of as the value in them being very much human, almost. The cuddly, the warmth they give us. But could a robotic dog give that same warmth?
Yeah, good question.
Could it give that same warmth and the friendship that a regular dog would? And I'm trying to explore that. And what would be the advantages or the disadvantages that it would bring to a family, and how would a child react to that?
I love that. Is that something you're currently writing?
I'm writing a story on that.
What age range have you set that?
I'm going to say a younger child's story, more in the age range of, say, 6 to 9, not terribly advanced science fiction and probably not too technical.
Yeah.
I don't want to go into more of the technical areas, but more look at the relationships, look at some of the positive things and problems, but also how you might solve them.
You're still tapping into something that is very, very current and a concern. And I think a lot of the concern about AI and technology in general is the lack of relationship that that it causes, that we're losing our what makes us human because we're relying on the technology so much. As an ex-teacher, I can see that for that age group would be a really interesting discussion point leading into STEM and into technology and into health even.
Well, one of the reasons that the person has a robotic dog here is a health reason. I pose the issue where that some people don't have dogs because of health reasons like allergies. And would a robotic dog perhaps solve that problem?
Yeah.
But on the other hand, introduce other issues.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I thought about was that, of course, AI has a lot of issues, but a lot of it has to do with ourselves.
Yep.
Our attitudes, especially with the relationships, especially at a child's age, how we perceive them, the relationship that we want to grow. You only have a certain amount that you can do at that age group. You're not going to, save the world, but I think that you can explore these issues with children.
Yeah, and you're starting that conversation with them at an age where they are starting to wonder, and to be able to engage in deeper conversation as well. So
I think
it sounds
so,
like a good
and I also think
audience.
it will be something that they grow up with.
Yes, oh, absolutely. Now, and the sort of thing for the young children today, for the 6, 7, 8-year-olds, what is their future going to look like? I think something that we can't even imagine. Anyway, we'll move on because we could talk about that for ages. So tell us a little bit about Septopus, but also what was the one factor? I think you emailed me back and said there could be several facts that made you go, okay, I have to write a book about this topic.
Well, of course, I absolutely love octopuses as well. One of the things that started me off in the back of my head a long time before I actually put pen and to paper, I used to talk to a friend about, should it be octopi, octopuses, octopodes, the Greek, the Latin, I studied Latin when I was a child. We used to talk about that a lot. It's one of those things that, and then when I got a little bit older, I had a chance in a short story to write about an animal. And I'd heard about the octopuses, all the tentacles, the different things. Octopuses are known to be really, really smart. That's one of the things absolutely amazing about them. And I've heard that they can solve puzzles. They're extremely interesting. I wanted to write about the octopus, and I also wanted to call it a septopus.
Yeah.
But one of the interesting things about this is the integration is not. It wasn't just writing about an octopus, and it wasn't just writing about a septopus either. The thing is that it was a highly personal decision because it's got to do with my life. And so the short story that I wrote actually features a scene in Septopus, which you would know about, which on the cover, you see the shark. There's a scene in Septopus where Stanley the Septopus fights a shark. And in that particular scene, one of the reasons that Stanley is better at fighting the shark than anybody else is because he is unusual, different from all the other octopuses, because he's got a very strong super tentacle. And that results from him being a septopus rather than an octopus.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, an interesting thing about myself, which I don't really tell people a lot, but I'll reveal it in the podcast.
Excellent.
Is that I actually have epilepsy. Now, this is, and it manifests in my leg. So I have a little bit of problem with one of my legs, and this has happened ever since I was a child. And because of that, I used to, and I still do sometimes, I rely on my other leg more. Now, this may sound fine when I say rely on my other leg more. I don't go around just hopping, or I don't go around not using my other leg. But sometimes when I'm standing upright or whatever, I lean towards one leg more. It's just very subtle. It can be very subtle. Or sometimes, or if I needed to do something like, kick a ball in sport, or, if I ever had to do, stand on one leg doing practice or whatever, it sounds very weird and very subtle, and you think it wouldn't make much of a difference to your life. But when you've been doing it for years, absolute years, it actually does make a difference. And then decades later, you realize that one leg, the leg that is not affected as much because it affects one side of my body more than the other, has actually grown stronger. And many, many years later, I realized this. I took up yoga. And in yoga, they tell you balance on one leg, then swap over, balance on the other leg. And I could feel I'm actually so much better on one side of my body. I've got a strong, very strong preference. And I realize that this is something that a lot of people don't think about, but it's actually it really happens. And I wanted to write about that in the story. What could happen to somebody? It's almost like a super symptom, of how this boy, because he doesn't have so much a problem with the leg, but a missing leg, that by not having not having one leg, he could compensate for it by doing more with the other legs, and that could grow strength. That could be something different. And so I tried to put that, and that was my own experience. That makes his legs stronger. That gives him a superpower.
Yeah.
And that was something that I wanted to put in as part of my own experience. And of course, it's exaggerated. I go around fighting sharks, but it's exaggerated for a children's story. And I thought to myself that would be a fun idea.
Yeah.
So it was all about putting my kind of transferring my own experience into this animal, and using that idea in the story, as well as some of my fascination with the octopuses. And it seemed the right thing. It just seemed to work with the octopus legs, and then my own experience, and somehow just seemed to gel.
Yeah, that's such a good origin story. All you need is one little element of truth, and then the rest of it, you build the fictional story around that. So I think every author, there's something about them and from them in the story, and you've just provided the perfect example.
I think it's interesting when you're often given the advice, like, write what you know.
Yes.
Now, obviously, I'm not an octopus. This isn't really my story. It's not writing a biography, but you have that little bit about yourself, and you can write what you know because you have those little bits of experience. And I find that in a lot of novels, people say, if I wrote just what I know, I'd just be writing about, a boring person who's an accountant or writer who sits at their desk all day and does nothing, right? Or something. But it's these little nuggets of things here and there, and then you build the rest of the story around them. And it could be something like what I've talked about. It can be somebody who has experienced some other issue, just knowing something like a beautiful sunset, and just putting that happiness in it is something that you know, and your truth. your experience into it, and that makes it that gives it an authenticity and an individuality that other people don't have. And that's about putting the truth in, not chronicling every single day of her life and writing a book.
Yeah, exactly. So with Septopus, you self-published that, but you publish, and a lot of people are doing this, are publishing it under their own imprint. So your imprint is Altitude Press. So OWL-titude Press. I love that name. I would love to know where that came from. It's a really nice little play on words, but I wouldn't mind betting there's a story behind that as well.
Yep, there is. Here's a little thing. I'm not sure if you can see. It's called Altitude Press. It's got a little sticker on the front of it, and you've got the logo. Altitude Press it's a lovely play on words, and my husband is particularly fond of puns.
Yeah.
And I'm particularly fond of owls. So like put an owl here. I've got the
love owls
ornaments.
Yeah.
We liked the name of Altitude Press.
Yes.
The reason altitude came up was owl and the word altitude.
Yes, yeah.
Altitude symbolizes something that we really thought would work with the press, which is reaching great heights. Yeah. And we thought, it represents really trying to do the very best you can, and also meeting, challenging oneself. And I thought that's really something that I think is a strong value for myself, and also what self-publishing is about. Really, I'm learning new things every day and challenging myself every day and pushing those boundaries. And that is that's something that we really liked about the whole altitude and altitude play on words. And we like to think that we set a high standard for ourselves. One of the things that that I think you probably know a lot about in self-publishing is that a lot of people in self-publishing, and it's a very sad thing, don't set high standards for themselves. Yeah. And it is kind of sad to see that many self-publishers market their books. I don't like this attitude in self-publishing, but I do see it sometimes, of saying things like, please buy my book. I'm a self-publisher, but it's not very good, but you should, I haven't done a very good job, but it's kind of like rough and ready, but, you should buy it from me because I'm a self-publisher, and you should support self-publishers anyway, even if it's not as good as traditional. I didn't do that good a job of it, but, you can't expect as good from me because I'm not like a traditional publisher. Yeah. That's not a good attitude. Readers care about the product, and they actually want a good product. I don't think that they care that you've self-published it, so long as you've got a good product out there. Yes. You should be putting quality out there. And that means you should be setting high standards for yourself. I think self-publishing can be absolutely great. It should be great. It should be setting those high standards for yourself. There is negativity about some self-publishing, but that's only if people set low standards for themselves. But the thing is, if you've got a good quality product, nobody will care whether it was you who published it by yourself, or whether it was some big company with 1,000 books. Nobody will care so long as it's well done. Yes, exactly. You're absolutely right. There are a number that I've come across that I'm like, look, I don't think so. And you're just reinforcing that stereotype. But there are so many authors out there who are choosing to travel that self-published route, that are putting in the money, they're putting in the effort, they're putting in the legwork, and are producing beautiful, beautiful products that when you hear them turn around and go, I only self-published it. It's that word only. Buy my product because you should support self-published authors. It's like, yes, I agree we should, but I
won't endorse your product unless it's actually a good product.
Yeah, the product is what matters, and that's what I think the readers care about. They just want a good book. There are bad products by both traditional publishers and self-publishers out there, and I don't want the bad products. Okay?
Base your opinion and your judgment on the quality of the book, not on how it was published.
That is how I feel about it.
Yeah, you've obviously learned a lot of self-publishing. Septopus, what's the biggest thing or the most surprising thing that you've learned from your self-publishing experience?
The biggest learning curve definitely for me was the marketing. Now, I've actually come from an editing background. So I used to work at a legal publisher before I did this. This is one of the reasons that I felt confident about being able to go into self-publishing, was because I had worked at a traditional publisher before, not a children's publisher, but a legal publisher.
Yeah.
And having done that, even though it wasn't children's publishing, I felt confident that I could, edit the book, that I could do layout. So I did the editing, but I also did a lot of the layouts, and I dealt with printers before. So I felt I had a lot of that already in hand. There was a big difference moving to children's publishing, but I could bring a lot of that knowledge and adapt. So that wasn't as big a learning curve. But the marketing was completely different.
Yes.
And it was something that I'm actually not a natural when it comes to putting myself out there. It was very big and scary for me. Quite a few writers of this nature, I prefer to sit behind the desk and just do the writing part.
I want the book to go out and market itself.
Exactly. That would be really handy. And one of the things I found out is that nobody really wants to market. Many authors want to just sit and write, understandably, but then the publishers also seem to think, even if you're traditionally published, the authors should be getting out there and doing the marketing. And the booksellers often think, well, we're just going to sell the book, we'll put it through the cashier and everything, but really you need to market it to get people to come into the bookshop to buy it. And I think, who really wants to market it? Nobody wants to market it. Yes. Nobody seems to actually want to do the marketing step. Figuring out what actually works was huge. And to be honest, I really don't know. I mean, I have learned a lot about what doesn't work, and certainly sitting on your butt and hoping does not work. I learned a lot about just taking rejection and the fact that you will go out to a lot of people and ask and ask and ask, and you get so many rejections. You really need to work at it. You can't take these things too personally. One of the things that I found very interesting was that the people that you don't think will help you as much are the people who are actually more keen, and some of the people that you think would help you are not. I was at a presentation once, and I was giving this talk, and there was a guy who fell asleep in the front row, and I thought I won't get him at all. And later on, he came up and he bought the books. He bought several copies. I thought I'd lost him completely. It felt like a complete failure. And he bought my books, and other people who looked really interested and looked really engaged. And later on told me how fantastic they were, and they didn't buy a thing. You really don't know. People can really surprise you about, how they're going to react later, and certainly whether or not they're actually going to buy the book.
Yeah.
So
I just think
it's so strange.
Just keep an open mind, basically. And I was just talking to somebody yesterday. It's like, make sure that you're just open to opportunities and that sort of thing. And don't necessarily discount somebody or an organization because you think they won't be interested. I think what the worst they can say is no. But you might be surprised. They might say yes.
You don't make assumptions. I made assumptions based on you think that'll be easy. You look at somebody's face and think they're lit up, and people will do things that surprise you. People are unpredictable. There are elements in the background that you don't know. There's so many elements shifting around in the background that you can't predict
we do all come with preconceived notions, don't we? Sometimes I even find myself saying something or thinking something, and I'm like, what experience do you have that actually led you to think that? I think maybe that's part of why we write as well, because we can, explore those assumptions in our writing. But anyway, moving on. One question I did have, because you have worked in publishing and legal publishing, you've had that different sort of experience. Are there extra challenges as a children's author?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that there are extra challenges for every step of the way.
Yeah.
From the writing to the making of the book, to all the decisions in the making of the book, to the marketing. And it's a very different world out there. And I think it's something that you have to consider when you're self-publishing. I suppose when you're writing at all, but it's particularly when you're self-publishing, because you have to handle everything yourself and make all the decisions yourself.
Yes.
So, I mean, for just at the writing stage, you do have to think about what you're writing. I've looked on social media, and a lot of people say things like, "Oh, you should just write whatever you want and don't think about the audience so much." A lot of people think that thinking about the audience is a lack of integrity, a lack of artistic integrity, and trying to censor yourself is about a lack of artistic integrity. I think with children, it is not. It is something actually that's very essential, much more essential.
Yes.
So you have to think a lot more about what's appropriate.
Yeah.
And also what's appropriate is much more fine-tuned, because age categories for children, there are board books, there are picture books, there are chapter books. There's so many different chapter group books. There's so many different nuances at all these different stages, and they're marketed in different ways. And whether you're writing it yourself or whether you're sending it off to an agent or a publisher, you have to know what you're doing. Whereas with adults, once you get into the adult area, whether it's like for a 20-year-old or 90-year-old, they don't really care.
Yes. Yeah.
And the area there is more about which genre are you in, whether you're writing romance, or sci-fi or whatever. It's a different way of categorizing. Once you get into that, I think it's more about which content you have rather than which ages. At a younger level is much more about which age group are you focusing on. Now, another thing I think is at the children's level, especially the younger children's level, you have much more of a focus on pictures. A self-publisher, you have to think about the fact that you'll probably be pairing up with an illustrator unless you're an illustrator yourself. It means costing that, bringing that into part of your expenses. And it also means that for some people, even just working out how to find an illustrator who's appropriate, it means formatting is different. Some illustrations, there aren't a lot, but there is an illustration in every chapter, just simple things, little bits and pieces. But one thing that I did learn, because when I did work in legal publishing, we had diagrams in books. I did the diagrams can make a difference, and same with pictures, to how an ebook works, because most ebooks, whether EPUB or Kindle ebooks, they want a text flow so that they can flow, and you can resize the text. And if you resize the text, then the pictures move, and it can look really, really ugly. You can keep the text static and the picture static if you use standard PDF.
Yeah.
And if you use a standard PDF, then some people don't like it so much because then you can't resize the text and everything. So to them, it's not as good value. Reformatting the whole thing takes a lot of work. On the other hand, would it add value? And it's a really big decision. I'm not sure if I want to do it. And I'm not sure. The other thing is children at that age, there isn't as big a market for the ebook. I do see a lot of people in the adult market who sell ebook only or ebook mostly, through on. They can put up ebook only, and then every so often, if somebody sells a print book, they can do print on demand. Yeah, I don't think there's as much market for that in the children's sector. You really need much more print, and people will want to see it in the bookstore. So yes, the people who are actually buying this, who are making the decision to buy this, are the parents, because kids they often don't have money.
Yes. Yeah.
So you're really trying to convince librarians, teachers, and parents that they want the book, because they will often make the final decision.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
And so, but you want the kids to love the book.
Yeah.
In adult publishing, adult will pull out the money or click their credit card, and that's it. Here you're kind of thinking, I want the kid to love it. I want them to impress the child, but I'm also trying to impress that adult, and they're very different values.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Kids want to have fun. Parents often look at things and say to themselves, but what is the moral lesson, or what will the kid learn, or will it make them a good person, And a lot of parents remember the books that they considered when they were growing up.
Yes.
So, you find a lot of people talking about classic novels and reminding themselves, I absolutely loved, Enid Blyton or whatever. And look, nothing wrong with that, but a lot of people have moved on. Some kids love Enid, but a lot of kids also like books that are much more modern nowadays. There are a lot of parents who have no idea what that market is like.
Exactly. And it's actually the same, because you mentioned teachers before. So there's quite a few studies that have been done with teachers and pre-service teachers to say that by and large, if a teacher is choosing books for their classroom library, they're going to go for the books that they loved as children. So unless they're like doing teacher librarianship or something like that, they're not as up with what the current trends are. So the default is the older literature, which is not always as PC as we need it to be. That you don't necessarily have those windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors in the more classic literature as well. I mean, that's not saying that there's not a place for that, but there have actually been studies to say, look, teachers will gravitate towards books that they knew as a child and that they loved as a child, which are not always they're not always going to grab the current generation's attention.
Some of those books are lovely, but there are issues of whether it represents the world, the language, the things that kids have done, and it's always good to have new stories. Seeing things through that different lens will be more relevant to children.
The ideal is just to have time to just read all of the books that are out there. It's like, I always used to think I'd like to work in a bookshop for that reason, but I'd probably just sit there and read.
Well, ideal job, just to sit there and read and be paid to do it.
Oh, wouldn't that be nice? Anyway, we can all dream. You've recently run a school holiday writing program for teenagers. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? Because working with teenagers is a whole different kettle of fish. So how did that go, and how important is it to you that you put yourself out there to do those sorts of things?
Putting myself out there is something that is very difficult for me. I'm not a natural at doing those sort of things, but it is important, and it's one of those things that's challenging. And but I feel that it is important to do, partly because it is challenging. So someone actually told me recently that if you're not really, pushing yourself, then you always wonder whether you could have done better. You need to challenge yourself a little bit more. But I also think that in-person events really do help an author. People respond better to you. People, look, there are authors who sell 12 million copies of a book and they haven't needed to go out. That sounds great. Please, somebody on the other side of the world, please order 12 million copies of my book. Never look at me. But really, I think that people do respond, especially when you're just trying to get a little bit of interest to begin with, to seeing you. They get excited when they see you. I've been to schools and the teachers say, the kids love seeing an author and it excites them. And even if you don't get heaps of sales out of it, it inspires the kids to read more. I've been told by teachers that they think they're meeting some celebrity. I said, I'm not a celebrity, but the kids actually don't know the difference. Sometimes they think that author equals celebrity. They get excited anyway. But yes. So The writing workshop went very well.
Excellent. Perfect.
We kept it at 20 people because I wanted the opportunity to be able to work with the children actually as a workshop. It wasn't talking to too many people, big hall or anything. But 20 people came up, and I wanted to work through some basic principles in writing, but also to have fun. And it was a cool holiday event. I felt that some of the kids in the writing workshop were used to writing being a bit of a chore. When I set them little things to do, like, write something and develop a bit of a story or an idea. Some of them were like, do I get in trouble if I don't finish? Or, what's the, they had learned several steps from tutors. Some of them told me they had writing tutors before. And I said, but once they loosened up and realized that I wasn't going to get them in trouble, if they didn't do this or they didn't do that, I felt they really enjoyed it. So it took a little bit of time for them to get over that, it was meant to be fun. But once they did, they were amazing. And one of the things I absolutely love about these in-person events is seeing how all the kids are so, again, unpredictable. Everybody's so individual, and they can come up with some fantastic ideas.
Yes.
We worked on a story. The kids came up with a story all together, and we went from them wandering around a store to causing the apocalypse. That's the kind of thing where you just build up a story and see where, and that's the kind of thing I love.
It's very rewarding, actually, when you can see a little change in attitude. And they realize that, this is not school, that they're here because they want to be, but also just that joy that at the end that they've created something and that, you've been a little part of that. And just to think that out of those 20, 1, 2, 3 of them might actually follow through and, look at making a career. You might have changed somebody's attitude in somebody's life through that, and it's sort of the joy of that sort of thing. So just one last question before we finish up. You have, and correct me if I'm wrong here, so 2 space themed books and one ocean themed book. Is that right? 2 and 1 space themed and
yes
themed. Yes,
the 2 space themed books. This is Princess Haley's Comet, and this is the Very Special Moon Mission. And then, of course,
then Septopus, yes. So if I like a little quirky question to finish off, if you had to choose between the deep ocean or deep space, which one feels more like your creative home?
Well, home is a rather scary kind of question.
Yeah.
In terms of creative, and what I'd be writing more about, I definitely choose Septopus. I have some more ideas for more ocean-based stories, and cool. I really have become attached to the characters. There's a character here in Septopus. Stanley is bullied by his older brother.
Yes.
And many people would see his brother as just a very two-dimensional baddie.
Yeah,
he's got all the stereotypical traits. He's a big guy. He's a jock, and he's very mean, and he goes around just bashing people up all the time. But if you heard his side of the story, would you think differently? Maybe he's insecure. Maybe he's maybe things have happened to him in his life, and maybe he maybe he has a story of maybe something could happen and he could change. He could be a better person.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a lot of capacity for people to either change or to have a little bit of their own point of view. And I thought that was a very interesting thing. And I liked that the kids actually talked about that about themselves, and they said that they could actually think about that. They could take that idea and think about that to relate to other people in their own lives.
Yeah.
If they talk to them, if they tried to understand other people like that, then maybe they could relate to other people better.
Yeah.
It made me start thinking more about the backstories of those octopuses, and I wanted to explore that more. Sorry.
Yeah.
So the sad thing is that I happen to be a terrible swimmer. Absolutely shocking. So in terms of being my creative home, I don't actually want to ride underwater.
No, but yeah, so your creative home can be the home that exists in your imagination, right?
Imagination, yes,
So
definitely
yeah,
imagination, because don't chuck me in the deep end.
yes, I love that. So, Rebecca, thank you so much for your time today and your insights and the conversation. Before we go, how can people find you, get in touch with you, purchase your books, book you for school visits, author talks, that sort of thing?
Well, I would absolutely love people to contact me and to book me for school visits or library workshops. I am looking at doing some other library workshops, probably one in Wallara mid-year, and also I'm going to be part of the Write Out West Writers
Excellent.
Festival at the end
Yeah.
of the year in November.
So keep an eye out for that.
But I am always interested in more.
Yes.
And so if anybody's interested in booking me for more library or other school visits, I'm very interested in more of that. You can contact me at info, at altitude.com. That's OWLTITUDE.com.
Yep.
The contact details are on my website, which is www.rebeccafung.com. And my books, you can also see my book details on that website. And Septopus is available at Abby's Books and Glee Books, and Read On Books at Westfield East Gardens. But also, just if you want to shoot me an email and ask me if you can't get them, and let me know, and I can arrange that for you. Or you can order them from me. Same with my other books. And if you just want to say hi, my contact details are on the website. Please say hi.
Yes, perfect. Thank you so much. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you produce next.
I'm looking forward to it as well.
Yay.
It's an interesting process.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rebecca.
Thank you, Kelly.